Historically, Apple was the most aggressive company when it comes to developing apps on their ecosystem because they were specific on what kind of applications they allow on their app stores, and they review very narrow functionalities that, for example, if your app touches anything related to cryptography or hardware that is on the iPhone or iPad, then they are going to test that functionality all across their devices which are supported on your target iOS version. That's really good for the consumer faces because they get really good apps, the polished functionality is there, and the entire Apple ecosystem feels like very fresh compared to Android, where you essentially can find any junk application that is probably not working on your phone, but that rarely happens on the Apple App Store. But that comes with the high price for us developers who just want to build hobby-related apps and not really use an App Store developer account, but we essentially have to still pay for the developer account even if we are just building our own apps just for our phone or our iPad. We still have to have that. The thing is that Apple limits the entire structure of this concept of having a certificate for your application that you deploy, and every time when you are rebuilding your application from scratch on your Xcode, it assigns you a developer certificate if you don't have a developer account. So in other words, you can still maintain the deployed application throughout connected cable to your iOS device, but that certificate expires after 7 days and you have to rebuild that again, unless you have the developer account or you are using some other developer account and deploy that through test flight for having those applications deployed. Although the test flight applications themselves have the expiration date of 90 days, which again limiting the factor of how much flexibility you can have as a hobby developer to develop your own applications on Apple. Let's find out why they actually do that. The main problem with this Apple developer account case is that even if you are not publishing any apps to the App Store, you still have to pay $99 yearly fee in order to have that Apple developer account and be able to install your application on your iPhone or iPad, even if that application is specifically designed for you. The problem there is that Apple have these insane guidelines saying that if the app is not particularly useful, unique, or app-like, it doesn't belong on the App Store, which of course limits the specific use cases that you might have. For example, if you want just to be able to build your own alarm system connected to your home devices, then that's not going to be enough to deploy that application to the App Store because it's going to be rejected for this specific guideline. I had an experience of building a specific application for microcontroller that got rejected from App Store. So I had to rebuild that application every 7 days because of the developer certificate gets expired, and you essentially get an alert like this that your application is no longer available. Of course, it's not available on the App Store, but you can still rebuild that on your Xcode every 7 days, which is very annoying. It's not something that you will do every single time, every week. This actually happens for native iOS apps. If you are building a React Native application with Expo, which has the hot reloader in them, that's a bit easier because Expo itself is published to iOS store, and you can just have a developer bundler published through Expo, and that will work without even publishing things on the App Store, because for the Expo to function, you just need the bundled React Native application with all of its libraries, which available directly in the Expo application itself. But if you want to deploy the applications which compile directly to binaries, then that's a bit struggle at the moment, because Apple itself has this specific guideline, which is Rule 4.2, which eliminates all of the factors of having hobby application development happening on the Apple devices. The reasoning behind this is quite effective for Apple to eliminate all of the cases where, for example, the hacked apps might appear on some GitHub repositories that will allow users to install on their iPhones even without having a developer account. That will make some of the application distributions possible even without installing them through Apple Store. That's potentially limiting the Apple's power and monopoly there. Of course, there is some side loaders that you can have on the iOS device, but you have to jailbreak them by removing the connection and limitations on your iPhone. But for regular use cases, if you just want to have your hobby application built, there is only two cases at the moment. Either you are going to have to rebuild that application every single week on your iPhone or iPad devices, or you just have to pay $99 a year for the developer account, and still you have to rebuild that application on the test flight after sometimes when it gets expired for the build release cycle. Every single app I built for App Store I've done with React Native Expo, which integrates seamlessly even if you don't want to publish your app. And of course, it's not the case when you want to make your app distributions, you have to publish to the App Store. But if you are building some hobby applications, Expo provides that hot loading and side loader to just load the bundle without publishing to App Store and without actually rebuilding the entire application on the Xcode to generate the certificates. The Expo app itself has everything in them, and you just have to publish to your Expo account, which comes very handy. So if you are an iOS developer, you probably already know all of this, and you must probably have the developer account, otherwise you won't be working professionally as an iOS developer. But if you are someone like me who occasionally wants to develop iOS apps for their use cases, like building an app for some specific alert system you have on your home, or you just want to make your own note-taking app, then I'll just remind you that you have to pay this $99 fee, or you have to stick with another developer platform like React Native is really good choice for all of this. I'm pretty sure React Native will do the thing that you are trying to achieve on your iOS project, specifically if it's a personal hobby project. If you stick to the end, you have to hit that like button and subscribe for the latest changes coming up on this channel.